My name is Alara. I was raised in a house that smelled of lemon polish and hymnals. My parents, Abraham and Martha, were pillars of our community church, their faith the very bricks and mortar of our existence. Their love for me, their only child, was fierce and possessive. I was their miracle, their proof of God's favor. I never questioned their love. It was as constant as the sunrise, until I learned that conditional love is the most devastating kind of lie. They didn't just abandon me, they excommunicated me from the family altar for a sin I never committed. And in doing so, they lost the right to call me their daughter. Before I continue, take a minute to like and subscribe to this channel and also watch till the end. My story might change your view on how you see family. And kindly share with us if you have ever been cast out by those you call family for sins you didn't commit. Our world was ordered, predictable. Mornings began with prayer, evenings with Bible study. Sundays were a marathon of services, my father's voice booming from the pulpit, my mother's harmonies floating from the choir loft. I was the good girl, the perfect daughter. I wore my modesty like a crown and my faith like a second skin. Their pro-life beliefs weren't just political. They were theological, the core of their ministry. I grew up holding signs at rallies, believing in the sacredness of every life. Their conviction was absolute, and I wore it with pride. College was my first taste of a different world. I studied psychology, fascinated by the human mind, by the shades of gray my parents' world denied. I started attending the occasional party, sipping a single drink, laughing with friends. I was testing the waters, but I always came home. I was still their girl. I just had a few more chapters in my book than they knew about. It happened after a late study session, a walk to my dorm that turned into a nightmare in a shadowy campus alley. The details are a blur of pain, fear, and a crushing shame that sealed my throat. I told no one. I scrubbed my skin until it was raw, trying to wash away the memory. I buried it deep, a festering secret. A month later, the nausea started, the mist period, the terrifying dawning truth. I took the test in a gas station bathroom, my hands shaking so violently I could barely hold the stick. 2 pink lines. A life sentence from a single, violent act. I collapsed onto the cold tile floor, sobbing. My first, my only thought was abortion. It was a secret. I could make it go away. I could pretend it never happened. But my best friend Linda found me. She held me as I shattered. "Alara, you have to tell them," she pleaded, her own tears mixing with mine. "It was rape. They'll understand. They'll help you." I believed her. I still believed in them. I went home on a Sunday afternoon. The house still smelled of lemon polish and the roast they'd had for lunch. I told them, the words stumbling out between ragged sobs. Their faces crumpled. They held me. They cried with me. For a breathtaking moment, I felt saved. Then I told them my decision. I can't have this baby. I'm going to end the pregnancy." The embrace turned to stone. They pulled back as if I'd electrocuted them. "No," my father said, his voice not gentle but firm, final. "A child is a blessing from God, Alara, no matter the circumstances of its conception. This is not a mistake. This is a test of your faith." "We will help you," my mother said, her voice trembling, but her eyes already hardening. "We will raise the child as our own. You will be strong. This is what our family believes." They appealed to the very identity they had built for me. The good girl, the faithful daughter. Trapped by my own upbringing, terrified and alone, I relented. I placed my fate back in their hands. For 5 months they played the part of supportive parents. They drove me to doctor's appointments. They bought tiny, yellow baby clothes. They spoke of God's plan in hushed, reverent tones. But I saw the cracks. The way my father's smile never reached his eyes when he looked at my swelling stomach. The way my mother would flinch when a church member asked about the pregnancy, mumbling about a blessed surprise before changing the subject. I was a living, breathing stain on their perfect image. The switch was not gradual, it was instantaneous. It happened after a deacons' meeting at our house. I overheard one of them ask my father, "Abraham, is it true the father is unknown?" The rumors are starting. After the door closed, the storm broke. "Do you have any idea what you've done to our reputation?" my father roared, his face purpling with a rage I had never seen directed at me. "They think you're a whore. We have dedicated our lives to this church, to this cause," my mother cried, wringing her hands. "And you have made us a laughingstock. How could you be so careless?" I stood frozen, my hands protectively over my belly. "Careless? I was raped." "That's your story," my father shot back, his eyes cold. "Your sin has found you out, Ilara, and we will not be brought down with you." The next morning, a suitcase was packed and placed by the door. My mother handed me a train ticket and $500 bills. Her eyes were dry and hard. "There's a women's shelter in the city where Linda lives. Go there. Don't call us. Don't come back. You have chosen your path. Now walk it." I was thrown out of my own home under the watchful eyes of our neighbors, the scent of lemon polish and hymnals forever tainted by their hypocrisy. Linda, my fierce, unwavering friend, didn't make me go to a shelter. She took me in. Her small apartment became my refuge. I gave birth to a baby girl I named Grace, for the concept I so desperately needed to believe still existed. Life was a relentless, exhausting struggle. I went to my parents' house 3 times, Grace in my arms, my pride in ashes. I begged for help, not for me, for her. The door never opened. Once my father's voice came through the wood, cold and impersonal. "You made your choice. You are dead to us. Leave before we call the police." The words, "You made your choice," echoed in my soul. What choice? The choice to be raped? The choice to be abandoned? I stopped going. I joined a community outreach program in Linda's town, a place for women like me, discarded, broken, but fighting to survive. They helped with diapers, with food, with babysitting while I worked 2 menial jobs and finished my degree online, my laptop glowing in the quiet hours after Grace finally fell asleep. I was no longer Ilara, the beloved daughter. I was a single mother, a survivor, building a life from the rubble they had left me in. The love I had for my parents didn't disappear. It calcified into a cold, hard stone of betrayal that I carried with me every day. They had preached about the sanctity of life, but in casting out me and my child, they had shown the world the profound hypocrisy of their own. The first year with Grace was a blur of survival. Linda's apartment was a small island of sanity in a sea of exhaustion. Nights were a cycle of feedings and whispered lullabies. Days were a frantic juggle of online classes, shifts at a diner, and the blessed relief of the community daycare for a few precious hours. The women at the outreach center became my new congregation. We didn't sing hymns, we shared stories of survival over donated coffee and secondhand clothes. Maria, who'd fled an abusive husband with nothing but her twins. Chloe, a teenager kicked out for her sexuality. They were my sisters in desolation, and together we built a fortress of mutual support. Their resilience was a different kind of faith, one built not on doctrine, but on gritty, unwavering solidarity. I finished my degree in psychology, not with a grand ceremony, but with a quiet click of the submit button on my final exam. The diploma arrived in a cardboard tube. I rolled it out and looked at it, then at Grace, babbling in her playpen. It was our victory. Ours alone. I landed an entry-level job at a nonprofit that helped trauma survivors. The pay was modest, but it was meaningful. I could finally afford a tiny 1-bedroom apartment for Grace and me. The day we moved out of Linda's living room, we both cried. They were tears of profound gratitude and hard-won independence. Daniel came into my life like a gentle sunrise after a long, brutal night. He was a donor at the nonprofit, a successful architect who believed in using his wealth for good. He was quiet, observant, and carried none of the performative piety I'd grown up with. His faith was a private, practical thing, evident in his actions, not his words. He noticed me not for my past, but for my present. He saw my dedication to the clients, the calm way I navigated crises, the fierce love I had for Grace, whom I sometimes had to bring to work when daycare fell through. He asked me out for coffee. I said no 3 times. My life was a delicate house of cards. A romantic gust of wind could collapse it. My trust was a shattered vase, glued back together but too fragile to handle. He was patient. He became a friend first. He'd show up with a new book for Grace, or help me assemble a stubborn piece of IKEA furniture without being asked. He never pitied me. He admired me. It was a novel, intoxicating feeling. When I finally said yes to dinner, I told him everything. The rape, the pregnancy, the betrayal. I showed him my scars, waiting for him to flinch, to retreat into the judgment I expected from everyone. He listened, his hand covering mine. When I finished, his eyes were bright with unshed tears, but his voice was steady. "They failed you in every way a parent can," he said, "but look at the woman you became in spite of them. You and Grace are a family, a beautiful, strong family, and if you'll let me, I'd be honored to be a part of it." He didn't see me as damaged goods. He saw me as a survivor. He saw Grace not as a burden or a symbol of sin, but as a joyful, perfect little girl. His proposal was simple. We were in our new apartment, a bright, spacious place he'd helped us find, but that I paid for with my own salary. Grace was toddling around our feet. He didn't get down on one knee. He just took my hand and said, "Elara, my life is infinitely better with you and Grace in it. Will you let me spend the rest of it making you both happy?" I said yes. The joy was pure, untainted by the past. We planned a small, elegant wedding. My community of survivors would be my family. Linda would be my maid of honor. Grace would be our flower girl. It was a celebration of the future we were choosing, not a monument to the past we'd endured. The news, of course, found its way back to my parents. Small towns have long memories and efficient gossip chains. A week before the wedding, the letter arrived. It wasn't sent to my old address. They'd found my new one. The envelope was thick, expensive linen paper. My father's precise, familiar handwriting addressed it to Miss Elara. Not our daughter, not dear Elara. Miss. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was not an apology. It was a decree. Miss Elara, it has come to our attention through members of the congregation that you intend to enter into a marriage contract. We feel it is our duty to remind you that you remain under the spiritual authority of your parents. We have not granted our blessing for this union, nor have we released you from our household. Any attempt to marry without our express permission is a violation of God's law and our parental rights. You are instructed to cease all plans immediately and return home to discuss this matter. The man you are involved with is unknown to us, and therefore cannot be deemed suitable. In his service, Abraham and Martha. I read it twice, then a third time. A cold, disbelieving laugh escaped my lips. It was so profoundly delusional, so utterly divorced from reality, that it circled back from being offensive to being almost fascinating. They had thrown me out with $500 and a train ticket. They had called me evil. They had refused to open the door to their starving granddaughter. And now they were invoking parental rights and spiritual authority. I showed the letter to Daniel. His face darkened with a protective anger I had never seen before. "What do you want to do?" he asked, his voice tight. I thought of the $500. I thought of the closed door. I thought of Grace's face. "I want to frame it," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "And I want to send a reply." I sat down at my desk, the same one where I'd finished my degree. I chose a simple, elegant card. To Abraham and Martha. Thank you for your letter. Your concern is noted, but it is several years too late. You relinquished all parental rights and spiritual authority when you chose your reputation over your daughter and grandchild. The door you closed will not be reopened. I am not seeking your blessing. I already have everything I need. My wedding will proceed. You are not invited. Ilara. I signed my name, just Ilara. I had stopped carrying their name long ago. I mailed it the next day. I didn't feel anger. I felt a final, absolute severance. The last thread had been cut. They had written to remind me of my place. And in doing so, they had finally, completely lost any place in my life. The past was officially dead, and I was about to dance on its grave. The morning of my wedding dawned clear and bright. There was no nervousness in me, only a profound, steady certainty. This wasn't the anxious hope of a girl leaving her father's house. It was the calm triumph of a woman building her own. Linda helped me into my dress. A simple, elegant ivory gown that felt like me, not a costume. Grace, in her tiny flower girl dress, kept twirling in front of the mirror, chanting, "Mama pretty, mama pretty." Her joy was the purest blessing I could have received. The ceremony was held in a small garden. There was no altar, no pulpit, just an archway woven with sunflowers and baby's breath. The guests weren't pillars of the community. They were my community. Maria and her twins, Chloe and her girlfriend, the women from the outreach center, my colleagues from the nonprofit. Their faces were turned toward me, not in judgment, but in radiant, unconditional support. As I walked toward Daniel, who stood waiting with tears in his eyes, I didn't feel the absence of my parents. I felt the powerful presence of the family I had chosen, the family I had built from the ashes of the one I'd lost. We wrote our own vows. Daniel promised to honor my strength and cherish my heart. I promised to be his partner and his home. When we were pronounced husband and wife, the cheer that went up was filled with a joy so real, it felt like a physical force. The reception was a loud, laughing, messy, beautiful affair. There was dancing and toasts and too much cake. It was everything my childhood home was not, full of genuine love, free from judgment, and bursting with life. Midway through the afternoon, as Daniel and I were laughing with a group of friends, I saw Linda's expression change. She was looking toward the entrance of the garden. Her face wasn't angry or worried. It was pitying. I followed her gaze. He stood there, just outside the gate, as if afraid to cross the threshold. My father. He was wearing his Sunday suit, but it hung loosely on his frame now. He looked old and frail and utterly lost. He was holding a small, clumsily wrapped gift. He wasn't trying to come in. He was just watching, a ghost at the feast of a life he had chosen to exile himself from. Daniel felt me tense and followed my gaze. His hand found mine, a silent question. "Do you want me to ask him to leave?" I looked at my father. I saw the shame in his stooped shoulders, the regret in his eyes as he watched me, vibrant, happy, surrounded by love. This was his punishment. Not anything I had orchestrated, but the natural consequence of his own actions. He had to stand there and see exactly what he had thrown away. I gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of my head. I didn't want a scene. I didn't want to give him the drama he might have expected. His presence was irrelevant. He was a spectator to my happiness, not a participant. I turned my back to him, smiled up at my husband, and took a sip of my champagne. I rejoined the conversation. A moment later, from the corner of my eye, I saw him slowly turn and walk away, the little gift still clutched in his hand. He had come seeking, what? Absolution? A chance to reclaim his role? He left with nothing but the sight of my unwavering joy without him. It was the most devastating revenge I could have exacted, complete and utter indifference. We left for our honeymoon, a week at a quiet lake house. When we returned, there was a package on our doorstep. No return address. Inside was a small hand-carved wooden music box. When opened, it played a faint tinkling version of Jesus Loves Me, the lullaby my mother used to sing to me. There was no note. I didn't throw it away. I placed it on a high shelf in Grace's closet. It wasn't a treasure, it was an artifact, a reminder of a world of conditional love that she would never have to know. A few months later, a letter arrived from my mother. It was full of stilted, formal language, asking after Grace's well-being, hinting at my father's failing health, suggesting a visit. It was still devoid of a true apology, still framed around their needs. I read it once, then filed it away with the other documents in my life: tax returns, insurance papers, Grace's birth certificate. It was information, not communication. I did not respond. My life was full. My work was fulfilling. My marriage was a daily source of strength and laughter. Grace was growing into a bright, fearless little girl who knew she was adored. One Sunday we were at the park. Daniel was pushing Grace on a swing, her shrieks of laughter echoing in the air. I sat on a bench, watching them, a feeling of such profound peace settling over me that it brought tears to my eyes. I had once believed my parents' love was the foundation of the world. Its collapse had nearly destroyed me, but from the rubble, I had built something new, something stronger. My foundation was no longer the brittle stone of their approval. It was the resilient, living bedrock of my own worth, my own choices, and the love I had chosen to accept. They had tried to bury me in their shame. They didn't know they were planting a seed. I was not their fallen daughter. I was a survivor, a wife, a mother. I was whole, and I was free.